Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. It's a DFS preview for the 2021 Rocket Mortgage Classic. In these preview videos, what I like to do is start out with a general overview of the tournament, looking at the tournament fact sheets, weather forecasts just to give you a general idea of what to expect, looking at past results and target scores to try to figure out what type of tournament this is. Is it a birdie fest or is it a grinded out par type of fest? And then from there, I like to look at a course breakdown to try to determine if there's a certain type of shot shape that matters at this golf course. And if there is, then I'll give you the players that have that shot shape or who play that shot shape. Then from there, I basically like to kind of break it down into what type of golfers you should be targeting in your lineups for this week. And I do that by covering the bucket system. Now, some guys do this, try to figure out what types of golfers to target by looking at strokes gained stats over the last 16, 24, 50 rounds to give you a good idea. But the thing is, every top 10, and if you're going to win a GPP, you want all 6 of your golfers inside the top 10. Every top 10 is comprised of different types of golfers. The bucket system analyzes this almost perfectly. It doesn't give us the exact players, but I'm going to give you the types of players that you want to be targeting. So we'll be looking at recent form, last week stats. Usually we look at last year and course history stats to go along with those, but this tournament's only been played for 2 years, so looking at those stats are kind of irrelevant. We'll look at salary and optimal lineups to see, what type of golfers what type of salaries should we start with. And then I will look at strokes gained stats through the bucket system. So you can find all the timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. Hover over that thing. You'll find all of them right there as well. Let's go ahead and get in this thing. So we'll start here with the tournament fact sheets. You can go and visit this yourself at the gcsaa.org. Tournament fact sheets are found at the bottom for any of the tournaments that the PGA Tour plays, but you can also find Korn Ferry Tour, I believe, and Champions Tour stuff there. So very cool website to go to. This just gives us a really cool general overview, tournament setup, course statistics, all that kind of stuff. So here we are, the Detroit Golf Club, the North course, but they are playing one of the holes on the South course, and we'll go over that during the course breakdown. So they're kind of and I believe one of the tee boxes on one of the holes is from a different hole on the South course. Again, we'll go through that, but just want to give you that information. 36s on both nines, so we have a traditional par 72, and it is 4 par 5s, 4 par 3s, nothing wonky or anything like that. So again, traditional. Yardage is 7,300 yards. That's pretty average on tour for a par 72. 5,100 square feet for the green size. That's a little less than average, but not by a lot. And I'm not going to say they're small greens. They're just smaller than average. And what we've seen over the years, this is kind of a bomber's paradise. So the greens really don't feel that small because most people have wedges into the green. So although they're at 5,100 square feet, which I would deem a little smaller than average, it's not really going to matter. There is one hole where water is in play, and that's a par 5. The water is right in front of the green, so it is in play. Whereas some of the other golf courses, it really doesn't have water in play. And I'm not going to really, I would tell you guys, hey, try to target golfers who don't find penalties all that often. Since there's only one hole where water is in play, there are 2 holes where out of bounds is in play. I think there's 2. There might be more, but I know there's 2. So there could be trouble there, but all in all, I'm not going to worry about it. The biggest thing when I look at these tournament fact sheets is the turf grass gives us a good idea of how high the grass or how thick the grass is going to be, how long the grass is going to be. Usually you can kind of tell on the greens how fast greens will be by how low they cut them. That's not always a given because soft surfaces can be a little bit slower than, say, firm surfaces. And I couldn't tell you, I don't have a specific measurement in my head to tell you what is fast and what isn't. A lot of speed of greens has to deal with undulation, and here the greens are relatively flat when we compare them to other PGA Tour golf courses or the courses that the PGA Tour uses. The big thing is the turf grass, bent grass or POA. I've heard a few guys in the DFS industry, kind of known people, talk about the turf grass being bent grass, mostly bent. Go follow bent grass. I'm here to tell you to not listen to that. That is nonsense. I did share a video on Twitter. I even gave you kind of the time mark where to find the breakdown of the greens. The superintendent himself said that these greens are 80% POA, if not 85% POA. He said it kind of in a reverse way. He was like, oh yeah, bent grass, it's 15 to 20% bent grass on these greens. So it's mostly POANA. So take that for what it's worth. The superintendent himself said it's POA. Put it this way, even if it was mostly bent grass, my threshold of going with POA stats would be somewhere between 30 and 40%. That's how much I know POA interferes with the other types of grasses. Because it's kind of an inconsistent grass. Let's put it this way. Bent grass is kind of a single leaf grass that grows straight up from its root. It follows the sun, so it'll lay down, or it just follows the sun throughout the day. Unlike POA, which is kind of a budding grass, a flower. I think it's actually technically a flower, but a flowering grass. The stem will sprout out, and then I don't even know what you want to call them, leaflets, or just a flower, I guess, will bud from there. So it opens up. If you don't feel like that type of grass doesn't affect how the ball rolls, I would rather play on pure bent grass, because the grass is going to stand. It's going to stand straight up mostly. Whereas POA is going to be like, I don't know what it will do. Foot traffic affects it quite a bit. But what I did say during the U.S. Open is that, they have growth regulators nowadays that, regulate how the grass grows. So, if you look at this last U.S. Open at Torrey Pines, it wasn't anything like the 2008 U.S. Open. And I think a big reason is how much technology has improved or advanced throughout the years, especially with grass growth and just agronomics in general, or agronomy in general, I should say. Either way, it's still, to me, it's going to matter because it is an inconsistent grass, and there will be moments where a little bit of the flower, a little bit of the bud will cause a ball to kind of go offline or just wiggle where it won't take a full break. So that's why I always look at POA. Usually golfers who putt well on POA are firm type of putters, those that, aren't died in the hole. They're not reading at cup speed. They're reading at, 2-3 feet beyond the hole. That's where I would take, that's why I would look at POA stats. So that was a long kind of vent a little bit of why I think certain people in this industry don't understand grass stats, or just grass in general. And that's my take on it. So I'm not going to go any more into that. I don't really care about tee grass. Fairways, I would rough, because your around the green stats would be here. But I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think. We can see some additional notes here. Said course received 5 inches of rain heading into tournament week. Guess what? If you didn't notice, or if you aren't following the news, Detroit is underwater right now. Some parts of Detroit. This golf course is found like smack dab in the middle of Detroit. So if you're trying to find, I was trying to find some kind of map that was showing where most of the water was going, but the superintendent even said himself in that video, again, that I had linked on my Twitter, that he does worry about, precipitation and too much rainfall, because the course drains very slowly. With that being said, like when we look at the weather forecast, I'm just going to tell you right now, we're looking at rain for the next 3 days. So if it doesn't slow down, we might not even have a golf tournament. So, without a golf tournament, you're not going to lose money, I don't think. But it would be interesting, to say the least. You can see some of the other notes here. There is rerouting for the tournament, so you can kind of read what that says. The architect is Donald Ross. The one thing to know about Donald Ross golf courses is that he is known for his greens sloping from back to front. So I always like to think of them as like ramps. So you start at the tee box, picking up speed, and then go up the ramp from the green. What makes this difficult is any shots around the green is going to be more challenging. You know, like think of it this way. Any side hill, like the further you hit it, so you don't want to be long, obviously. But even if you were like slightly long or even like pin high, but you were missing left or right, how that green is sloped, it's going to make for tricky chips. Which I would then say either you have to have a really good around the green game to not care about Donald Ross stats, or you look at those that play really well at Donald Ross golf courses because they know, you know, when they're looking at yardages, okay, I need to be hitting this shorter rather than longer. So that's why I would look at Donald Ross stats in that way. I personally don't have them. Don't have a database yet. Everything is basically off of spreadsheets. So I'd have to find my Donald Ross golf courses, equal all the results up for the people in the field. That's a lot of work. And I'm not ashamed to say that I just don't feel the benefit of doing that right now. So if you have it, though, I would definitely take a look at Donald Ross golf courses for that fact, or just find golfers that are good around the green, because I don't think it really matters around the green for the architect. If you have good around the green stats, you're probably just good around the green. So you're probably really creative or conservative or whatever you want to call it. I would definitely look at something like that. So that was a little ways on the tournament fact sheets. Let's go ahead and get into our weather forecast. We are at Detroit, Michigan, like I had said before. Scattered thunderstorms tomorrow, Tuesday. Let's see, what was the precipitation chance? 60% chance of rain. That's Tuesday. Wednesday, there's a 40% chance of rain, and Thursday there's PM showers. So I don't know when the rain is actually going to start, but that's a lot of rain when they already had a ton of rain. Like I said, there are parts of Detroit that are underwater. Cars are submerged on some of the roads. I don't know exactly where they're located, but with that type of water, that type of precipitation, again, I worry that the golf course or the tournament might not start. But if it does, soft conditions. And when we get into the past results and target scores, this is a birdie fest. So it's just going to lend more to a birdie fest. Now, when it comes to Thursday and Friday weather forecasts, we're mostly looking for wind. Rain isn't going to be that big of a deal, so I don't care to see rain. In all honesty, rain helps golfers out more than anything, but when the wind is up there, that's the tricky part. So 10 to 15 miles an hour Thursday, and then Friday, 10 to 15 as well. So I can't find an edge just looking at the general weather forecast. You would probably be better off taking a look at maybe windfinder.com and also taking a look on Wednesday. Wednesday is going to be obviously the good time to take a look. This is Monday night. This isn't really a good time to put all of our eggs into this basket. Definitely take a look Wednesday. I always suggest it. Always look Wednesday night at weather just to see if anything crazy is happening on whether or not you should choose one wave over another. Even if there is some kind of weird wave thing, we're still going to find golfers from both waves inside the top 10. So I don't really put a lot of emphasis on which golfers I choose from the waves, but for showdown slates, it is definitely a plus. So let's go ahead and move on. We can actually take a look at, let's take a look at target scores and past results. So we only have 2 years of data. And you can see the winner, 2020 Bryson won at 23 under. Nate Lashley won at 25 under. Both of these guys won by considerable amounts. Second place was 20 under in 2020 and 19 under in 2019. So basically, I like to look at all the top 10 scores, and it looks like it is 15 under and up. So this is definitely a birdie fest. Take a look at all your golfers that score really well. Perhaps, put all the stats in, looking at POA golf courses at 7,300 yards, par 72s, at, you know, that are birdie fest. You probably won't find all that information. You can just compartmentalize each one of those things and take a look. But yeah, I'm definitely looking at golfers that can score low. So that would probably eliminate golfers like a Jason Day for me. Jason Day is, I mean, he is known. He's even said this himself. He likes golf courses where par, you know, the winning score is around par. And that's because he probably just makes more like improbable pars than he does birdies. And I can feel that pain, because that's kind of me too. I'm really good at making par, not really good at making birdie for whatever reason. I can make a par 5 in 2 and 3 putt for whatever reason. And I wouldn't even say I'm that bad of a putter. It just happens that way. It's almost like you're comfortable missing a birdie putt, and it's like, oh, whatever, I guess I got par on the way. But then when, you know, you have to get out of trouble to try to save par and you have a hard putt, they end up going in for some reason. I don't know what it is. But it is definitely a thing in the golf world and on tour. People talk about that kind of thing as well. It's a lot easier to make a par putt than it is a birdie putt for whatever reason. Like for the same distance and the same break. It's just weird for some golfers. So anyways, that's my take with that with Jason Day. He's the only guy that comes to mind. So, you know, again, that's where it would be beneficial to look at those types of stats if you have them available. If not, it's fine. You don't have to, you know, put all your eggs in that basket. So the other thing I like to talk about is cut. The cut line for both years was -5. So I could see the same thing this year as well. Okay, let's get into a course breakdown. Now, I'll just save you the headache. You can read through all of this, but really, there isn't much to do with shot shape. You can see kind of my summary here. Most of the holes, any shot shape is going to be just fine. There aren't many holes where you need to shape it one way or the other. It's a relatively flat golf course. It is tree lined. And with that being said, like, you would think if there's slight dog legs or that kind of thing, it would matter. But the dog legs are not sharp. And the ones that are, you can just bomb it over. That's what Bryson did. That's what DJ has done at this golf course. That's what a lot of the big hitters do, is just hit it over the trees. So yeah, shot shape doesn't really matter. And there aren't enough dog legs. It is tree lined, like I said, but the trees are not dense. So if golfers do find the trees, there are paths out of them. It reminds, like, the trees here aren't as thick as, say, an RBC Heritage, but it reminds me a lot of Hilton Head, where guys do hit it into the trees, but somehow just have clear paths to the green. That's what it reminds me here at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And I did tell you some of the holes are played on the South Golf Course. Hole number 3 is the only hole being used on the South Golf Course. And then hole number 4 is using a tee box from the South Golf Course. It adds 80 yards to the original par 5. So it's normally 555 yards, I believe. And now it's at 635. And it kind of like double dog legs, but it's such a small dog leg, you know, off the tee. I don't think it really matters. I think it goes over one of the greens, or really close to, on the South Golf Course. I don't remember which one it is, but obviously that one's not being in use this week. But it's interesting how they kind of compiled this golf course to make it tournament ready for the PGA Tour. So yeah, no shot shape really matters. So we're not going to be looking at golfers with any type of shot shape. So from here, what I would like to do, I would go into the buckets, but let's go ahead and bring up grass stats. Why don't we just go and do that first? Oh, by the way, strength of field, 291. We'll be talking about that shortly, because this is a very low rated tournament. Like, the strength of field here, not very strong. And over the last 6 weeks, this is the 3rd lowest ranked tournament. I think I should say over the last 8 weeks. Is that what I said? So the last 8 tournaments. So this is the 3rd lowest. And really, Bryson is the one that makes up most of the points. 26, Patrick Reed 21, and Webb Simpson is 18. So definitely take that into consideration. If you can look at results or any type of research, look at strength of field under 300 just to see how golfers have fared. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the grass stats. So the best POA golfers in this field is a golfer I said last week. I told you guys, don't play Jason Day. I nicknamed him He Who Shall Not Be Named. I can't get around to Jason Day. I will be late. I don't care to play him. I don't feel like it's smart to invest your money into him. And this is the second week in a row that I've kind of shit-talked him a little bit. What's the point? The guy has a bad back. He fights allergies constantly. He's a nice guy, don't get me wrong, but unless you want to invest your money on your emotions, then I wouldn't waste your money on Jason Day. Maybe a lot of people are not on him and you want to take the what's the word I'm looking for? You want to take advantage of people not playing. I forget what the dang word is. It's late. My vocabulary is gone. But yeah, I can't think of the dang word. I'm trying to think of it. It's going to bother me. But anyways, if you think he's going to be low owned, leverage. Use leverage and obviously play him, but I'm still not going to. I don't think it's smart. Anyways, he is your top POA guy, followed by Hideki Matsuyama. You can see the rest of the guys here. This is your top 20 in the field. So the 20th guy is Maverick McNeely. You barely see him on the screen. Matthew Wolff is actually right after that. I'm not going to play much Matthew Wolff either. Unfortunately, I feel kind of the same way about Matthew Wolff as I do Jason Day. It's just more of a mental thing with Matthew Wolff. It's more of a physical thing with Jason Day. I'll avoid both of those golfers. But yeah, you can see the rest of the guys here. Matsuyama, Reed, DeChambeau, Simpson, Griffin, Watson, Snedeker, Gary Woodland, Keegan Bradley, who kind of screwed us last week, as did Ricky Fowler if you kind of jumped on his bandwagon. And then we also have Joaquin Niemann, Ches Reavie, Phil Mickelson, Kevin Kisner, Charles Hall III, Charlie Hoffman, Emiliano Grillo, and Adam Hadwin. Looking at top 10 success rate, Jason Day is your above and beyond favorite. This includes Torrey Pines, Farmers Insurance Open, where he has a very good track record there. That's usually closer to par. So yeah, he does have a great chance of finishing inside the top 10, but I think that's mostly at your California events like the Genesis, Torrey, golf courses that are difficult on POA. He has done well at. So I don't have a lot of trust. I don't care. Okay. Let's stop talking about Jason Day. A lot of the same guys that you saw with the overall POA is also located here. Maverick McNeely just keeps popping. And believe it or not, he's 11th in my model. So that's really interesting. And we'll talk about the sweet spot rank tomorrow. But just to see that, Maverick McNeely, that's pretty insane. Anyways, the rest of your top 20 golfers are up here for top 10 POA percentage. Looking at your top 2021 POA golfers, Patrick Reed leads the way. He has an average finishing position of 14.5. Then it's Sung Jae, Chris Kirk, Bryson DeChambeau, Joaquin Niemann, Webb Simpson, Jason Day, Will Zalatoris, Alex Noren, Lonto Griffin, Jonas Blix, Cameron Davis. I still call him Cameron Davis. I know he's Cam Davis everywhere else you see him. Sepp Straka, Cameron Tringali, Charlie Hoffman, Jason Kokrak, Tom Hoagie, Lucas Glover, Kyle Stanley, and Doug Gim. And Doug Gim, by the way, 0% success rate inside the top 10. So although he's 20th in 2021 in this field, still not the greatest on POA. Okay, so grass stats, there's that. Let's go ahead, talk about the buckets. Again, I'm not going to be talking about course history. We have 2 years, and usually when I look at, we have 2 years of data. Usually what I do is you have to have at least 2 years for me. So after this year, this would be technically the first year that tournament history would be recorded for me. Because you really can't have tournament history with just one event. Like I want to see a sample size of at least 2 years worth of data before I consider anything tournament history. So this would be the first year that I would record tournament history. So next year we can actually look at tournament history results through the bucket system, but we're not going to for this year. Instead, we will look at last year, although really that's kind of, we only have 1 year of last year results. And how the bucket system does, like for when I talk about last year results, it's recording the top 10 of last year. What were their last year results? That's what it looks like. I know that's very confusing, but if I were to go to say 2019, you can see there's no last year result for 2019. So I'm not recording a last year result for how that tournament did that year. In 2020, obviously I did. There's a last year result column with the golfers here. So I'm looking at all the top 10 finishes and then what was their last year result. So I only have 1 year of data for that, which, to me, that's not a big enough sample size. We can still talk about it though. And I can also compare it to other tournaments that are kind of similar to this one, just to see what their rankings are as well. But yeah, we can go ahead and talk about some of these buckets. Here, let me open this back up. So like I said, I'm not talking about course history. We can look at last year results. Again, like I said, we only have 1 year's worth of data. And I know a lot of this probably doesn't, might look a little confusing. But you know what? Let's not start with last year. Let's look at salary data. Obviously, we start our lineups with looking at salaries, trying to figure out are golfers worth their salary or not. Do I want to invest in a golfer that's over 9K? Obviously, those that are in the 10K, doesn't make any sense to do so. Why don't we just start with the optimal lineup first? We can look at 2020 or 2019 and 2020 and what the optimal lineups were and what the GPP winning lineups were. In 2019, obviously Nate Lashley won that tournament. It's well known. He was, I have him as a Monday qualifier, but he was an alternate. He was, I think, he just missed out in the Monday qualifier, but one of the Monday qualifiers had to withdraw, so he got into it. I think that's how it ended up working out. He was the alternate for that Monday qualifier, got in that way, and then proceeded to win the tournament. So took huge advantage of that Monday qualifier alternate position. But anyways, your optimal lineup consisted of a 9-9 golfer, 9-3, 8-9, 8-5, and 2 6K golfers, and that made up 49,500 of the of the salary that you could use. Obviously, we can only use $50,000, so it left $500 on the table. It scored 691.5. The $5 GPP winner scored 651, so it was 40 points behind the optimal lineup. And they started with the 9-9 Brandt Snedeker, went to 8-9, 8-4, 8-5, 6-4, and 7-9. So a very balanced lineup. They did go down into the 6K range and picked out Doc Redman, but very, very balanced that way. Looking at 2020's optimal lineup, a lot of this information we could probably just hide. I think I probably should. Yeah, that's fine. So really, we're only looking at this for a recent form. But the optimal lineup there used $48,000 of the $50,000 salary. You know I don't like that. I always look at anything over $49,000. But the optimal lineup was an 11-7 golfer, 7-7, 8-2, and then everyone else was in the 6K range. 6'8" Matt Wolff, 6'9" Ryan Armour, and 6'7" Sepp Straka. You can see the DK points that were scored here. The Millie Maker lineup, obviously, this was the fourth tournament in, so DraftKings was really gung-ho of doing Millie Makers. But it consisted of a 10-7 golfer, another 10K golfer, and Victor Hovland, so very stars and scrubs here. At 8,200, Adam Hadwin, and then 3 6K golfers using Matt Wolff also, but Danny Willett, and Sepp Straka once again. So that was very stars and scrubs. Used $50,000 of the salary. It scored 692. The optimal was 724, so it was super close. Very, very close. Is there a lineup that could have beaten the Millie Maker lineup, but was over 49,000 and more of an optimal lineup? Let's take a look. I always call this the realistic optimal lineup. So we'll start at 11.7. I'll drop to 8.2. That's fine. 1.6K golfer. Let's just do Matt Wolff and Kevin Kisner. That makes sense. Does McNeely work? And now I can do another 7K golfer if I wanted to. And usually what I'm trying to do is find everyone inside the top 10. It looks like I can't. 6.9 would be the closest. And that leaves me with 48.9, which is not something I care. So yeah, we would probably have to do stars and scrubs, right? So this is 49.9. Does this beat out? It probably doesn't, does it? Maybe it does. 6.12? Oh, it didn't include one. 714.5. Yes, it does beat the Millie Maker lineup. So that would be more of a realistic optimal lineup using more than $49,000. It was 49.9, I believe. Yep, 49.9. So anyways, that's your optimal lineup. If we come back to the summary and look at the salary buckets, it's ranked based off of how much we've seen this. So it's only looking at the last 2 years, obviously, but it's ranked based off of the frequencies that we see inside the top 10. Your number one bucket is that 6.5K. Obviously, in both lineups, we saw a 6K golfer. But it had 5 occurrences where it finished inside the top 10. The second bucket is your 7K range. That's there's no surprise there. 7K is usually the number one salary bucket. You want to put as many 7K golfers in your lineup as you can. And by that, what I mean is somewhere between 2 to 3. Like I wouldn't do more than that. But yeah, and maybe just one. You know, obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. I think in that realistic lineup, we only could use one 7K. Or maybe we didn't. I can't. My memory is just shot. I can't remember that. Either way, the minimum for top 10s would be 2. So that's what I would kind of go with. Let me move on. The number 3 bucket are 10K golfers. So if you're wondering, should you play a 10K golfer? Well, you know, we've had a max of 3 10K golfers inside the top 10 of 1 year, but we also had 0 golfers inside the top 10. We do have every single year, we've seen at least one inside the top 20. That's what this column over here is indicating. If you guys can see it on the screen. That's not good enough for a 10K golfer, but if that is your fail safe, it's, you know, it's not like you could get wiped out by putting a 10K golfer in your lineup. Kind of stinks that they would be top 20, but still, that's better than, you know, better than obviously there being 0 here. I don't know what I was trying to go with that one. And then fourth, I mean, this is really interesting. Like, again, we only have 2 years of data, but the 8K range, 9K range, and the below 6.5K range, pretty darn close to tying each other. The 6th ranked bucket is the 9K range. I don't know how I feel about that. You know, if we look at it, this is just based off of success rates. The 9K range would be your number 2 bucket, primarily because, you know, it just goes in line with that. That also has a lot to do with how many golfers you see in those buckets every single year. You know, you can see the averages here, and then how many of those golfers are in the buckets this year. So like, you know, 52 are in that 6.5 and less. That's less than the average of 63. And everything else is teetering around, you know, what we typically see. I will say this, we're still waiting for, I think, 5 qualifiers to be added to the DK pool. Most of those will be under 6.5. So this will go up as well, and it will get closer to that 63 range. And then tomorrow we'll go over the strategies and just go over like how many we actually project for each of these. Yeah, yeah, I'm not going to go over any of those right now. I do usually do the best plays, don't I? So why don't we... No, we won't do it with salary. We can go through and look at it with the other buckets. Okay. So I'm going to start with the last year buckets. Now, the last year buckets, for me, how I'm looking at this, because we only really have 1 year's worth of data, is kind of looking at the rankings and using past tournaments as kind of a stepping stone, not even stepping stone, but a template. And I'll tell you this right now, I'm not going to show you, but usually the rankings go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see the rankings are a little bit different here. So, you know what? I think what I end up doing, you know what? We're going to actually skip the last year bucket, because I didn't even, like, the rankings are like this, and it's going to confuse you guys. I didn't follow the rankings when I put in my own 2021 DK page. So if I were to go and sort this, actually, let me sort this by last year stats. You can see under the last year bucket, I put these as 2s. So this is the last year result right here. So 1 through 20, I marked as your last year bucket 2. If we go back to the summary page, it's last year bucket 4. And I primarily did this because, first of all, the page you see right now is recording it for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. I don't want this to do anything else but record all the different, frequencies. So this is accurate on this page. However, because we only have 1 year's worth of data, I don't find that sufficient enough to go by. So I created my own ranking. And essentially what I did was I ranked it as I said to you. This is number 1. This last year bucket here was number 2. And of course, it goes by ranges. I'm sure most of you guys have been with me long enough to know that it goes by ranges. So my number 1 bucket, the did not plays from last year. My number 2 bucket would be the top 20s from the year before. My number 3 bucket actually is going to be the missed cuts from last year, because these 3 buckets for any given tournament are usually your 1, 2, and 3. And it changes based off of the type of tournament. Usually your WGC events or any of your events that have a really high strength of field, your number 1 bucket is typically the 1 to 20 range. It's not always true, but it's very close to being 1 or 2. Sometimes, most of the time, it's 3. And then your number 1 bucket's usually always the did not play bucket. And then your number 2 bucket, like, it's interchangeable between missed cuts and top 20s. And a lot of that has to do with kind of looking at how many are in the field this year as opposed to average per year. And same thing applies up here. We're going to have less top 20s than we are missed cuts. So just based off of volume alone, your 80 plus or your missed cuts and your did not plays will always be buckets 1 and 2, most likely. But what I'm going to do is I'm marking this as my second bucket. So it's going to be confusing to you guys, I understand, but it goes 1, 2 top 20s, 3 missed cuts, 4 is 20 to 40 for your last year finishing position, 5 would be 40 to 60, and 6 would be 60 to 80. We can go ahead and talk about each of these buckets. So if I were to clear it out and just look at, how about we look at last year bucket 1s? And we can go by salary. Now, Will Zalatoris is the top. I really like Will Zalatoris this week. I really don't, if we're putting money on the line here and we had to, you know what, never mind. I like every other golfer that's under him, 8K and above. Above 80 or above $8,000. So I'm excluding Phil out of this. Like, I don't care for Phil this week, but from Garrick Higgo up to Will Zalatoris, I think those would be great plays for your last year bucket 1s, those that did not play. You do want to target golfers from this bucket, and it's a very big bucket. A lot of 6K golfers. You could probably ignore most of the 6K golfers, but if you did want to find some of them here, obviously you certainly can. A lot of people are on Austin Eckroat, a very talented rookie. I believe Davis Thompson is also a very talented rookie that isn't really getting any respect because most of it's going to Austin Eckroat, for rookie's sake, that is. John Pock was actually not, He was talked a lot about at the Palmetto Championship. Not much talk right now currently on him. But yeah, my 6K range that I probably like is above this. I mean, I like Taylor. I don't mind Adam Long. And really anybody here. I don't mind those golfers. But yeah, you can see the 7K range up is pretty small. In this bucket, we only have 13 golfers. I'm pretty confident in saying at least 2 of these guys are going to finish inside the top 10. No. I'll say one of these guys will finish inside the top 10. And I'll give like a 75-80% chance 2 will finish inside the top 10. So you can go ahead and mark off whoever you like there. I'm only going to look at the top 3 buckets. So my bucket 2 are the top 20s. I obviously like Bryson this week. He is number 1 in my ranking, and it's by far. Like there isn't anyone close to him. This is probably the biggest disparity that I had for rankings. And I mean, everything just kind of meshes up to really well with Bryson. Obviously the course history is a huge thing because he only has one, he's won this event before, but he does have good POA stats, and he is a strokes gained 1, meaning all of his stats are positive. So I do like Bryson DeChambeau. Maybe that's a frightened slip because I do like Webb Simpson this week as well. He's been battling an injury. Hopefully he's off the mend and better. But anyways, I don't mind Webb Simpson. And then, I mean, we have 2 6K golfers. Cam Champ obviously finished 12th here last year. I don't know if I can trust him this week. So probably not going to play Cam Champ. I think something's also going on with him in his life. Henrik Norlander, on the other hand, for a 6K golfer, I don't mind that. And they both actually have pretty decent top 10 POA percentages. So their success rate inside the top 10 is really good. And then a bunch of other golfers, Kevin Kisner coming from Travelers where he had 263s. So obviously he can go low. He's not afraid to go low. So that might be a good reason to play him. I still don't know how I feel. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I do like Sepp Straka. I liked Maverick McNeely last week. We'll see who they get paired up with and if it helps them whatsoever. We'll take a look at this in the strategy video tomorrow. But yeah, I do like... this is a good bucket too. And then the last one we'll talk about is the missed cuts from last year, which include Patrick Reed and Bubba Watson. I don't know how I feel. Like, I don't think Bubba can actually curve the ball as much as he wants to at this golf course. It's very tree lined with very little dog legs. Like, he can still get creative on a lot of the holes, but I just don't see it happening all that often. I'll tell you this, I'm not really looking to play a lot of these guys up here. Like, these 3 golfers will probably be my lowest owned for each of their pricing tiers. I would much rather play all the golfers below them. I will have my FOMO lineups of these guys, but I definitely like the golfers that I see here. Cameron Davis is a bomber. So is Sebastian Munoz to some extent. And really good one-putt percentage. He can go low. He's one of my favorite birdie type of golfers this week. And then, I mean, there's a lot of 6K golf. I mean, we see Vincent Whaley, Will Gordon, who's played here. Oh, he did not finish top 10 at all at this tournament. I think I mentioned him in the beginning, so obviously it wasn't him. Was it Chase Seifert? Was that who it was? Did we see him in the last one? In the last bucket in the top 20s? I don't think so, actually. Right? I don't know why. Okay. Oh, there's Chase right here. So another miscut. So that's not good. Yeah, 6K range, very interesting here. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody from this range, from this bucket, actually finished inside the top 10. A very large bucket. I forget how many there were. We have 54. So yeah, it's pretty large. I mean, it's almost a given we're going to find a top 10 finisher from this bucket. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Again, we're not talking about tournament history or course history. Let's take a look at the last week buckets. So again, we only have 2 years of data on this, but that's better than only 1 year of data. Your number one bucket are those that did not play. And again, usually it's the 3 buckets that we saw with the last year buckets that show up really well. It's your did not plays, your missed cuts, and your top 20s. And usually it goes 4, 5, 6, in succession. But what I did is I kept it as is. So we can actually talk about what you see on the screen, and we can go through that. Now, I usually like to always start with your top 5 frequencies for these buckets. And we do see 2 that finished inside the top 10, or top 5, I'm sorry, that did not play the week before, as do we see missed cuts from the week before. We only see 1 as our minimum for top 20, so really target your top 20s, your missed cuts, and your did not plays from last week. And then you can sprinkle in the rest. But there isn't a very good representation of the other buckets finishing inside the top 10. We had 1 instance where a 20 to 40 finisher from the week before finished inside the top 10. We had 2 in that 40 to 60, and we've seen 1 every single year within that range finish inside the top 10, but 0 for the top 5. And then that 60 to 80, usually this is always the worst one to go with, so we probably want to avoid that altogether. I think there was someone notable in that the last week's 6s. Okay, so we had Phil being one of them. That's definitely a notable golfer. Patrick Rogers, who was one of my favorite golfers this week in the 6K range. Obviously, this doesn't bode well for him. I think that's probably it. I think it was Phil is the guy I was really looking for. But Lanto, Doc Redman, I don't like that. Ryan Armour, a lot of people talking about him. Don't like that. Previous champion, Nate Lashley. I'll say this, only 1 golfer is going to finish inside the top 10 in this bucket. So at most 2 will, but really it's like a 25% chance 2 will. It's like a 50% chance 1 will. So I even when I say that, I'm not going to say 1's going to finish inside the top 10. I just don't like this bucket based off of the merits, and we'll see if I'm wrong. Our number 1 bucket, golfers who did not play last week, and I can scroll over here and show you stats for last week. There are none. No last week's scoring stats. Webb Simpson, it all depends on his injury. He's only played in 2 events since RBC Heritage, and that was the US Open as well as the PGA Championship. He's battling an injury, so we have to keep mindful of that. Some intriguing plays with Matsuyama and Will Zalatoris, as well as Jason Kokrak. Like, these 3 golfers I like a lot. Very questionable on Sungjae Im, and I don't mind Gary Woodland. His stats over the last 2 weeks probably don't give him justice. Like, he's been playing pretty decent golf as of late. And then we can see some of these other golfers here. I tend to try to stay away from anyone that's under 6.5K, but James Hahn seems like an interesting play at 64 if we want to go, do a deep dive and go stars and scrubs. Yeah, I think really the only golfers I care for that are in the 6K range for this bucket would be Martin Laird, perhaps Jimmy Walker. I'm usually kind of off of Jimmy Walker. Very interesting, Camilo Villegas. 0% top 10 POA percentage. He's been on tour for a very long time. It just shows he doesn't do well on POA. So probably avoid him because of that. But when we look at 7K and above, we only have 13 golfers to choose from. And I do like this bucket. So I think, you can go several ways about this. I wouldn't choose more than 2 golfers from this entire bucket to anchor my lineups with. And I think it's probably trying to figure out which 10K golfer it is, whether it's Matsuyama, Zalatoris, or Simpson. I personally would lean towards Zalatoris, but I'm not going to avoid Matsuyama and I'm not going to avoid Simpson. I do like that. But Simpson's injury issues kind of concern me. So if I'm putting a kind of an exposure limit on him, it's probably going to be like 10, 15%. And then Matsuyama, I don't think I'm going to have a limit on him. Like I said, I like Kokrak, so obviously I'll play as much as I can. And sneaky, I kind of like Luke List this week. Danny Willett's 19th on my model, and he just got done with He's off of the mend of appendicitis. His appendix burst, if you did not know. So there's that. Joel Damon, a pretty good value, 39th ranked in my model, $7,000. So yeah, not terrible. Going to the second ranked bucket here, it starts with Matthew Wolff. I will be full fade on Matthew Wolff. Keegan Bradley, I can get back to. I know he burned a lot of people, but obviously we liked him for the Travelers for a reason. I'll limit my exposure. I mean, $9,000 is pretty expensive. That's a very bad value rate for Keegan Bradley. Now that I see this, maybe I'm going to jump the fence. Same goes with Ricky Fowler. I mean, it's not that I won't play him because of their price tags, but I just like Max Homa, Emiliano Grillo, Cameron Tringali, even Snedeker and Siwoo Kim. I don't mind playing that. I like Chris Kirk. I like Sebastian Munoz. I don't mind Scott Stallings, although I'm not going to go overweight on him. And then I do like some of these 6K golfers. So if I like all of these golfers, it's really hard to justify paying up for any of these. Now, I will have FOMO and I will play some of these guys, but for the most part, I'm just going to ignore these 3 golfers as much as I can. Let's look at that third bucket. Pretty small bucket. These are top 20s from last week. Now, I like a top 20 from last year to go with a top 20 from last week. And we have 4 instances where this happens. And that's Mark Hubbard, believe it or not. Maybe this is a resurgence. Last year at this time of the year, I believe he had the most consecutive rounds of under 70. Because this was the 4th tournament back from the COVID break. And I think all the way even through this tournament, he had, I think he had, I don't think it was like a consecutive streak. I think it was just like he had at least 2 rounds each tournament. No, I don't think that's what it was. I think it might have been consecutive rounds. So either way, he can go low, and maybe this is a course that he's decent at. I don't know. I like Sepp Straka, and I don't mind Kevin Kisner. It's going to be difficult because I like Bryson. I like all of the 4 golfers that I just mentioned. However, there are some other interesting names. I'm not going to play Jason Day, but Bubba Watson seems interesting. Hickok, I wouldn't mind going back to Hickok. Primarily, I know he was in that playoff event last week, but he's a young guy. I don't think that's really going to, affect him that much. Robert Streb, sneaky good 6K golfer. Interesting. I did play Robert Streb last week, probably in 2 of my lineups. I always create 100 some lineups, so 2 isn't really a big number, but I'm comfortable playing Robert Streb. He's a pretty solid golfer. And he obviously finished top 20 last week. I could see 2 to 3 golfers from this bucket finishing top 10. So that's what I would kind of highlight and go through. We're going to look at 2 more buckets. We're going to look at recent form and we're going to look at strokes gained buckets. So when we look at recent form, we are looking at 2 years of data once again. I did not alter or manipulate any of this data. So your number 1 bucket is that 40 to 60 range, or for recent form, that is. Second bucket would be 60 to 80. Third bucket's 20 to 40. This is very common every single week on tour for any tournament. Our minimums for top 5, this is pretty common as well. So we still want to highlight these 3 buckets and try to choose golfers from them. So recent form 1, when we take a look, again, this is recent form average between 40 to 60. So we can use these stats here. And we have Simpson and Zalatoris up top. So they shared, obviously we talked about them with the last week bucket, but they also share the recent form bucket. I like this bucket just all together. Kokrak, Joaquin Niemann, Zalatoris, Simpson, those are all great choices. Sung J M right now is such a wild card. He's been playing kind of really bad golf as of late, but not super terrible. His results, his finishes are pretty bad. Is it because of his putter? No, I'm not really seeing that. It looks like he's positive with strokes gained in his last 7 weeks. So, yeah, I don't know. But either way, very interesting. Bubba, I don't mind going back to him, but again, this isn't a course that he can really curve the ball that much. So I don't know if that's going to limit him. I don't know what it's going to do to him. So I'm basically going to avoid these 4 golfers here as much as I can. I still want to play them because they're in the buckets that show up, but I kind of want to avoid them because of just their value. Like, that's really bad value. And they just haven't really shown me anything to trust them going forward. Gary Woodland's interesting. I don't mind playing him. I don't mind playing Kisner. I also don't mind playing Higo. Obviously, he has won on tour at the Palmetto Championship, so I don't mind that. I also, again, Grillo, Tringali, those are all golfers I like. And, I mean, the 7K range is super solid as well, so I don't have any issues. I mean, you could select maybe 4 of these guys. Like, if we take a look at recent Form 1, the max inside the top 5 is 3. I could see that exact same. Actually, the max just altogether is 3, whether it's top 10 or top 5. So I don't mind that whatsoever. I think that's a very good bucket to choose from. If we take a look at the next bucket, it's headed by Keegan Bradley, which is interesting. 9K is not a price tag I'm comfortable playing Keegan Bradley at. But the rest of the guys that are underneath him, I don't mind at all. Again, Sebastian Munoz, I like. Luke List, not terrible. Chris Kirk, Siwoo Kim, Max Homa, Cameron Davis, all those golfers, I don't mind one bit. And then a lot of some of these 6K golfers I like quite a bit too. Obviously, we already went through the last week's 6 with Patrick Rogers. Not a good one. Say with Nate Lashley, Tom Hoagie, Will Gordon. Probably those guys we want to avoid. Camilo Villegas doesn't have very good POA stats, so we'll probably stay away from him because of that. Yeah, there's golfers here that I like quite a bit. And this is such a big bucket. Like, how many golfers are actually in this one? 67. These bucket totals can't be correct. Can they? Oh, this equals 156, so yeah, it can. Obviously, our recent form was much higher with missed cuts, and that was probably because of last year. Again, 2 years worth of data, so it's really difficult to assess this. But either way, we still see these buckets finishing inside the top 10 for this tournament. So just goes to show that these are really good buckets to choose from. And then recent form bucket 3, I think there are less golfers in this one. Yeah. So there's 10. Again, Bryson shows up. Bryson has shown up in a bunch of these buckets that we've gone over. It's almost a no-brainer that I think I shouldn't say it's a no-brainer to play him in at least 30% of your lineups, but I think that's a very safe number to choose from. And we've already seen that this is a tournament that kind of favors your stars and scrubs approach. So I don't mind doing something like Bryson, starting with Bryson and then dropping to 6K and trying to find a golfer that you like in the 6K range. And out of this bucket, I mean, I like Bryson. I have no issue with Reed. I like Matsuyama. I like Hoffman, and that's probably it. You know, we already saw kind of our issues with Armour, Redmond, with the last week's 6s, but you know, that it's just one of the buckets. Obviously, Redmond and Armour are showing up in this bucket, the recent form 3 bucket, which is a good one to choose from. So we can't really, you know, him and ha too much about that. And really, those are the only 3 buckets I care to talk about. Let's go ahead and look at strokes gained and then finish this video up. So when it comes to strokes gained stats, this is pretty static. Like the rankings always stay the same. And you can see what basically each of those descriptions are. It all goes by off the tee stats and putting stats. You can see the pluses and minuses next to them that indicate either positive off the tee or negative putting, or negative off the tee, positive putting. Obviously, take a look on screen. I'm not going to explain most of that. It's good to know. I mean, over the last 2 years, I've kept strokes gained data for this, and usually that's as much of strokes gained data that I have for any tournament. Is usually 2, sometimes maybe 3 years worth of strokes gained stats. So we're kind of right on par with, you know, the strokes gained stats that we have for this tournament. So I think we can go through this pretty accurately. One of the biggest surprises, we usually see 10 golfers with, you know, strokes gained stats that are all positive. That's your off the tee approach, around the green putting. we only see 5 in the field this week. So that's a huge change. We do see a lot that hover around, average, but then we have 24 that are in that strokes gained bucket too. So maybe we see one more come from this bucket. But how I always look at this, I'm going to use my minimums here for top 5 frequencies. So I do want a strokes gained 1, a strokes gained 2, a strokes gained 3, and a strokes gained 4. It looks like the negative off the tee positive putting golfers have shown up inside the top 10 more so than any of the other buckets, but it's the only negative off the tee bucket that does show up. So we can almost cast aside negative off the tee and negative putting golfers, which we have 30 of those in the field this week. We can also probably cast out those that do not have strokes gained stats, and there are 22 of those golfers this week. So altogether, 52 golfers we can eliminate from our player pool. That's pretty darn good. So let's take a look at all the golfers that we have for strokes gained 1 stats. We'll look at the first 4. So it's pretty small. Bryson, Patrick Reed, Webb, Cameron Tringali, and Chris Kirk. Yeah, I probably wouldn't go more than 1, but I might get frisky and grab a second golfer. If I'm starting with like a DeChambeau, I think the obvious would be either go Cameron Tringali or Chris Kirk. And I'm not even saying that those are givens. So, anchoring 1 lineup, basically what I think this does, should give you enough confidence. Do you like Bryson this week? Play Bryson. If you want to be kind of contrarian, Patrick Reed or Webb Simpson would be good choices. I think that's a really good way to start. If we look at our strokes gained 2, again, we have more in the field this week than we have seen on average. Joaquin Niemann heads this one. I think that's also a good choice if you want to start with Joaquin. Not terrible. Same goes with Jason Kokrak. Obviously, we've talked about these guys. I shouldn't say extensively, but pretty darn close. And then whatever you want to do with Sung Jae. I don't really trust him. I'm not going to play Jason Day. Charlie Hoffman seems decent. So does Emiliano Grillo. Maverick McNeely. Sneaky. I don't know if anybody's going to play him at $7,700 unless a bunch of touts around end up doing that. I also don't mind Sepp Straka whatsoever. But again, Sebastian Munoz, I've seen him enough times that I think he's going to be like one of my core plays. I do like Sebastian Munoz this week. Monto Griffin isn't terrible, not a bad value. Cameron Davis is a very good value. We haven't seen him for a while, but he is a bomber, and at $7,200, that's a pretty decent play. We also see Vincent Whaley down here. It's at a good value, and same with Bryce Garnett. Both of those guys, good values. And I don't think that's terrible plays. Strokes gained 3 golfers, headed by Matsuyama and Will Zalatoris. I like these 2 golfers as well. I think how it's difficult. I think what I'm going to do is each of the 10K golfers, I'm probably going to play in like 16%. And I think what that does is it gives me like 80% ownership starting with one of those guys. So for the remaining 20%, I might pair some of them up together. And then I might also start like in the 9K range. So I kind of like that strategy. I might go a little bit more with Bryson. I might play him in either 20 or maybe 24%. So that would take, another 8% into that 80. So I'd only have 12% where I could go elsewhere, but I think I like that quite a bit. Bubba, Bradley, Fowler, those are all golfers we already talked about that I don't think I can trust. I can't get there, but a lot of times when you build your lineups, if you want to win a GPP, you got to go with golfers you don't trust. And interesting plays the rest of the way down. I like Luke List. I don't mind that. Again, Kramer Hickok or even Kyle Stanley. I actually don't mind playing Harold Varner III. Usually, I don't like playing him when like everyone else is on him. He just seems to disappoint more than he comes through. And then there's actually some pretty good 6K golfers down here. Benny Ann, I don't mind Benny Ann. Will Gordon, Scott Piercy. Actually, I shouldn't say Will Gordon because of his last week's stats. Even some of these guys. Scott Harrington's always a sneaky play. Brandon Hagee has been playing good golf whenever he's invited to an event. I just don't know how often he's been playing. His actually recent form average isn't good, so maybe I'll take that back. Not terrible there. And then the last one would be strokes gained bucket 4 golfers. Again, of all the negative off the tee golfers, which these guys are, You know, this is the only bucket that has consistently shown up inside the top 10 and top 5. Like right away, I like Brant Snedeker. I like Kevin Kisner. Again, I'm probably gonna stay away from Matt Wolff. $9,100 is just too expensive for me. Like I don't trust putting money on him. Some of the other guys I wouldn't mind going back to the well for. Like I like Alex Noren, Adam Hadwins is a terrible play, Patton Kizzire, even Mark Hubbard. We obviously just talked about him not too long ago, being a top 20 finisher last week and a top 20 finisher last year. So not terrible there. I also wouldn't mind going down to Rafael Cabrera-Bello once again. Like he's been playing some streaky golf, but I can get behind that. And that's going to round out the strokes gained 4. And I think that's just going to be it. I don't have anything else that I need to discuss. So tomorrow, what I'm going to be doing is going over a strategy video, which obviously, if you've been with me before, that's going to encompass basically looking at tee time pairings and then really trying to figure out what my anchor buckets are and basically try to build some lineups. I tried something new last week, which included some ownership, like my exposures for ownership. I'm going to try to get that already in place so you guys don't have to go through that kind of arduous ordeal that I did last week. And I'll just tell you who my top ownership, my top exposure guys are. We'll see how it all goes. Today, my video was delayed because work this week, well, not this week, but Monday, my 9 to 5 job was busy. I had really no time to prepare for this video or even update my spreadsheets. I update them every Monday. So usually whenever I can get them done as quick as possible, gives me more time to prep for this video. I didn't have a lot of prep time this time. If it seemed a little sloppy, that was the reason why. And I'm tired. So obviously had some issues trying to figure out some words that I wanted to use. It just happens sometimes. That's life. This isn't a full-time job. Not yet. It's mostly a hobby. Would love for it to be a full-time job sometime, but that's just how it goes. Tomorrow, again, trying to narrow down the player pools, trying to find some anchor plays to give you. We'll build some lineups. I'll show you my exposures. Hopefully tomorrow will give you a good idea of what to choose. And obviously we're going to have some more data, some more information on the weather and what that's going to do to this tournament. Yeah, we shall wait and find out all of that tomorrow. But as for this video, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to end it here. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in that strategy video tomorrow. All right, bye.